Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome back to Inside the Lines. I'm here with Steven. We have a few NFL games still going on, but with that said, we still have plenty to go over, plenty to predict for the upcoming week. Before we get to that, Steven, a special shout out from Jake, who once again an act now in for college football. We're looking at the Georgia Bulldogs, who just annihilated Ole Miss, will now be going to Tennessee. The line right now is 10. We're already seeing steam 10, 10.5 in some places, right, Steven?
Yeah, it's 2 spots at 10.5, so I want to act 10 now.
Right. And the Sportsline Model makes this a 21-point game. So we think this team's going to be headed to Georgia. So not much explanation needed there for such an awesome team. Let's move over to the NFL. More your cream of the crop. Tough day to be a Baltimore Ravens fan, so I don't want to rub this in for you too much, but we have another AFC matchup coming up in Week 11. Cincinnati going to Baltimore. Baltimore laying 2.5 right now. Do you see that moving at all?
Not right now. I mean, so Baltimore, besides a horribly disappointing loss for both teams, there's some injuries. Marlon Humphrey had a non-contact injury. That's never good. Ronnie Stanley, who's had some health issues, also came up lame at the end of the game. So then there's T. Higgins on the other side. So I think those injuries will kind of cancel each other out. Both teams' defenses look pretty bad and vulnerable at home. Couldn't stop their opponents. So I think this line's going to stay at 2.5. If anything, it's going to go to 3. So if you do like Baltimore, I'd take it at 2.5 before it bumps to 3.
Okay. And we'll stay over here in the AFC North with Pittsburgh going to the Browns now. And now after that win, do you think there's going to be an overreaction to the Browns? How do you think this plays out?
Yeah, I think that there will be a reaction to the Browns positively to their side, but it's legitimate. I think that
that's so big of you to say.
Well, Cleveland, what they showed with Deshaun Watson showed is that even when he's passing poorly, his numbers weren't that great. He showed toughness and clutch gene. And frankly, even though Baltimore was winning the game for 59 minutes and 20 seconds, literally, and never were down until there were zeros on the clock, Cleveland probably should have won that game by 7-10. Baltimore got handed a couple sketchy defensive penalty calls that extended drives, and they were gifted a muffed punt. So I think that people properly look at Cleveland. Pittsburgh got another miracle win where they were outgained. I think it's, I don't know how many times they've been outgained every week. So but the problem with Deshaun is he did have several injuries, which again, bolstered people's confidence in him. At the same time, if he's not fully healthy, he could have some knee issues. So that's the thing that we don't want. So the steam's not going to happen until we know that Deshaun's fine.
Okay, good to note there. Let's talk about two teams who definitely will be lacking confidence after today. Tennessee going to Jacksonville, 2 teams that got crushed, but now you got to pick, who do you bounce back better with? Who do you think you have more confidence can get this done next week?
Yeah, a more impressive crushee was Jacksonville. Even though they lost by more to San Francisco than Tennessee did to Tampa. San Francisco, the narrative, they added Chase Young. They got their pass rush back home and they had 5 sacks. They forced 4 turnovers. Debo came back and he instantly made an impact. Brock Purdy was perfect again with all his weapons and Trent Williams playing. So I think that bettors will be like, okay, it's understandable to get crushed by San Francisco coming off a bye. Not as impressive to get crushed by Tampa. So I like this team to go to Jacksonville, even though they just lost by a boatload. There's definitely been a trend towards teams that are good who get embarrassed, bounce back the following week, at least in the public's mind.
And I'm hoping Seattle's one of them because I have them minus the 6, and I have not checked on that since I've gotten to the airport.
Oh, they're up by 4.
All right, that's what we like to see. All right, let's move on. We'll move over to the Niners, who now will be hosting Tampa Bay. Again, you said they look great. Everyone's healthy. Everyone's looking better. Is minus 10 an exaggeration? Does the model like 10, or do you think you need to act now on this?
The model's got no value on this. We have some value on the under. So Tampa was very impressive. They hammered Tennessee, but stopping Tennessee's offense, Tennessee couldn't run the ball. Derrick Henry couldn't do anything. No big plays from Will Levis. So I think that I would definitely grab San Francisco at minus 10. It's not going to go to 9, 8.5. Mm-hmm. So you probably want to get 10 before it goes to 11 or 12.
Okay. Interesting game here. Philly going to Kansas City, both coming off a bye. Kansas City laying 2.5 right now. I saw your notes and I agree, and I remember this from the Super Bowl narratives too. A lot of trends that will probably support Andy Reid and coming off a bye and trends like that to get people and the steam on the Chiefs. Do you agree with that, Steam? In general, how do you see this game playing out? What are you looking at here?
I think that there's not going to be any line movement because they're both on a bye. But I think that if anything, I definitely could see Kansas City going to -3 on some spots. So if you like them, take 2.5. Andy Reid is, I think, 27-4 straight up coming off the bye. And a line of 2.5, it's basically close to pick 'em. So it's almost like straight up is almost like covering in this case. So I think that that's going to be hold. I have no idea how it's going to go. I think the model is very slightly leaning towards Kansas City, but only because, again, that key number of increment. It's very rare that games end up in 1 or 2s.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what we figure out about this game as we dive into it through the week. Let's move over to Houston. Arizona going to Houston. CJ Stroud still looking like that guy, still looking like that rookie.
Yeah, he's amazing. He was so he out Joe Burrow. In terms of just incredible clutch heroics. He threw a horrible interception where they should have just salted the game up. They're up by 10. He threw a terrible interception. It's only second of the season, and it allowed Cincinnati to come back to cut it to 3, and he still bounced back. It was pretty incredible. So I think that the steam will definitely be on Houston, and correctly so. Arizona is having a good comeback win against Atlanta, but if you're struggling at home versus Atlanta, that's not necessarily going to be that impressive. And with Josh Dobbs playing so well in Minnesota, everyone's going to be like, oh, Kyler played well, but really he didn't look that much better than Dobbs did in that situation. And so they're not going to necessarily give credit for Kyler looking like playing pretty well in his debut.
Yeah, and these are games with some teams still playing now. So before we get to the next game on Houston, for our later viewers, when would you stop taking this line? What's too big for you here?
Anything more than 7 would be too big.
Okay.
But I could think this thing can go to 7.
Yeah, because right now we're looking at the lookahead lines, and I think I could see this line probably opening up closer to 7. So if you can get under 7, certainly something to act now on. Let's move over to Chicago going to Detroit. Detroit right now kind of in a shootout with the Chargers from what I can see just looking at a box score right now.
Yeah, it was 38-31. Now the Keenan Allen just tied it up, assuming they hit the extra point. So I think that the note on this one is really going to be there's probably going to be steam on the Lions because no one's going to believe that whether it's Tyson Bagent or Justin Fields coming back, that Chicago can keep pace the way the Chargers are keeping pace with Detroit. Detroit's issue was scoring on the road was usually much less, but obviously not a problem today. I do think that there could be some steam on the over in this case, at 45.5, and Detroit, because Detroit usually averages over 30 at home. And based on their defense today, while again, Chicago can't put up the 38 probably that the Chargers have right now, it could be something where models end up residing around a 34-20 type score.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move to Dallas going to Carolina. Was Carolina on a bye this week?
No, they just got. They just got hammered on Thursday. Not hammered, but they look terrible. So watching the Giants, the Giants basically they did score 1 touchdown, but it's basically no offense. And Carolina, unfortunately or surprisingly, with Bryce Young is very similar in the sense that you can't imagine what they could do to sustain more than one scoring drive against Dallas. And so Dallas started the game slow. Got stopped on a 4th down and goal. Dak threw a pick, but then doesn't matter. Now it's 42-7 with more than a quarter to go. So I think this team's going to move correctly to Dallas. Dallas, the narratives are clear. Dallas, when they are better than you, they will kill you.
Right. This is an interesting line for me. Chargers going to Green Bay. Chargers laying 2.5. Green Bay kind of hard to read because, again, technically outgained the Steelers this week, however, lose a game. What do you see here between these two teams?
So I think that I don't see the line moving. Now, the Chargers were bet to -3 before their game even started, and I could see it coming back to 2.5. The line I like to see steam on is the over. Based on how the Chargers defense for most of the years, their pass defense was the worst in the league in yards allowed, but their run defense was vastly improved. Today, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery had massive runs. Detroit has to be over around 240, 50 odd rushing yards. So with Green Bay actually putting up 13.5 in the first half against Pittsburgh, and and actually looking pretty good offensively, I could see this team definitely going on the over in this case. At a pretty low of 42 right now.
Right. Let's move over to the Giants going to Washington. Washington right now down 4 to the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
If Washington loses this game, do you think there's any steam on the Giants, or is this just only kind of a game where Washington can get steam?
Yeah, I think it could only go to Washington's side because the Giants just can't put a point. So, the impressive thing about Washington right now is the fact that I think Sam Howell probably will be leading the league in passing yards, maybe, because Tua's on a bye, but he's top 2. The steam to Washington potentially because again they traded arguably their 2 best edge rushers, and their defense has been looking pretty good for the last 2 weeks. Their offense can move the ball, and the Giants are just not sure how they can score against almost anyone. But it's such a big number for at -8. I wouldn't bet it.
Yeah, I don't think a team like Washington deserves to have a number like that. All right, let's move over one more game. Things are getting chaotic around me. We got Seattle going to LA Rams. Seattle laying 3 here. Seems like the kind of narrative where the Rams just don't really have a home field advantage.
And we don't know if Stafford is going to be okay. Yeah. Assume he will be, or maybe Carson Wentz, and people don't exactly love him, but then people can imagine, maybe he'll pull a Baker Mayfield who came off kind of the scrap heap and revived his career.
What's funny was Stetson Bennett was at the game this weekend at halftime. Yeah. I'm like, doesn't look like he's in rehab. I don't really know what his deal is there. He looked all right, but what could have been for him in LA, man? What could have been?
No, but I don't think there's anything special to say about this Seattle Rams game until we know who's quarterbacking for the Rams.
True. Yeah, definitely a lot of games depending on some injuries that we'll be able to go over later in the week. Let's hit a quick recap here. Jake wanted to let us know about Georgia to get that -10 if you can still against Tennessee. That's going to be a great game. And then, of course, Dallas -9 versus Carolina, and Houston -4 versus Arizona. CJ Stroud is starting to get the attention that we have been giving him since July, may I add. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, with that said, that's all we have for tonight. Again, we'll go over the games we couldn't, but the teams we couldn't throughout the week. Lots of injuries to go over. College basketball, college football, NBA will be a busy week. So good luck with your bets the rest of the night. We'll see you tomorrow.